So 2 U.S. Army active duty soldiers and 1 former soldier were just arrested for selling military secrets to China. Like $15,000 all in. These guys are going to spend a good chunk, if not the entire rest of their life in jail, which seems like, not an ideal trade, but maybe somebody should have told them that before they started selling off our secrets to the Chinese. Now, there's 3 different guys labeled here. We've got the sergeant, Zhao, most of the stories about this dude, most of the indictment. Then we've got a Lieutenant Li Tian, who I guess was a health service administrator at JBLM, Joint Base Lewis McChord, out in Washington. And then the 3rd member here is Rio Duan, who I guess is the former soldier who served as kind of the conduit between the guys on active duty stealing the secrets and their Chinese handlers actually paying for them. So he was the middleman, if you will. Now, they say Tian, this health service administrator, sold sensitive materials on Bradley and Stryker vehicles for $500. That seems like not a lot. But who knows? We don't know exactly what he passed over, but $500 for sensitive information on U.S. military capabilities to one of our major adversaries seems like a low price. Now, the bulk of the indictment here is for this one Sergeant Zhao, who was an active duty, or is still an active duty sergeant in the U.S. Army. In fact, he's the supply sergeant for the headquarters and headquarters battery of the 17th Field Artillery Brigade, again out of Joint Base Lewis McChord. And the big count here in the indictment is conspiracy to gather, transmit, or lose national defense information. I didn't know that you could get in trouble for conspiring to lose national defense information, but learning every day here. So they say that Zhao received at least $15,000 between August and December of 2024. So this is relatively recent. And my understanding of this, having read through this indictment, it looks like there was undercover officers, either from the FBI who announced this indictment or U.S. Army counterintelligence that kind of figured out what was happening here. And they were able to kind of embed themselves in this process and start hitting up Zhao as a possible buyer. So one of the people that he was talking to about all this for at least a good chunk of this time was U.S. Fed, essentially. So there you go. He did get some stuff off to China, but in the process, started working with the guys that would actually arrest him. So looking at some of the things he was offering to sell here, on July 13th, Zhao offered a computer for $1,800. Just a government computer. Probably doesn't work, given my experience with government computers. But the next day, he said, actually, no, I got to back out. I found somebody who's willing to pay more. Looks like he got about $2,000 for that one. On July 16th, he sent a picture of 20 secret hard drives, so classified as secret. He said, I've got no idea what could be on these things. It could be intelligence or it could be nothing. And I want to think about that for a second. So when we're looking at what these guys are willing to sell to our enemies, our adversaries, China in this case, it's not a matter of, well, let me just, we've seen times throughout history where it's like, well, let me see if I can pass certain information across that maybe won't put, U.S. service members in harm's way. In this case, he says, I have no idea what is on that hard drive. Could be nothing. Could be really, really important. Could directly cost the lives of Americans at home or abroad. He didn't care at all. He passed those 20 over for, he sold all 20 for $10,000. The price is starting to move up a little bit here, if you will. Later on, he offered 2 top secret hard drives for $8,000. Now, in reading through this indictment, so top secret above secret, secret above confidential, and we'll get to that here in a minute, but it's not clear that he even had a top secret clearance. So I'm not sure entirely how he got his hands on these. My understanding in reading through this indictment is Zhao, as a supply sergeant for a headquarters battery in a field artillery brigade, that is not a top secret level assignment at all. I'm an artillery guy. I've had headquarters and headquarters batteries that I've been a part of or worked alongside. There's no TS clearance in that HHB. Maybe the battery commander at times, but there's no indication that the soldier here actually had a TS, which means in this case, he probably had to steal that or deceive somebody in order to get his hands on these top secret hard drives. But in this case, he offered to sell them for $8,000. I guess they were corrupted or didn't work, or there was like nothing on them at times, so he had to take a significantly lower price. That one went out as a discount. But then we move into some kind of different aspects here, where on October 11th, he sends over to his source, hey, I got my hands on the good stuff. Spread the news. It's brigade level. And my understanding in looking at all of this is he was the guy on the ground, Zhao in this case, was the guy on the ground finding the equipment, and then he would go out to this buyer, again, Duan, the former U.S. Army soldier, and he would say, hey, shop it around. find someone that's willing to buy this and see what the price is that you can dig up for me. So in this case, the brigade level stuff turns out is about, a couple different items here. One was the HIMARS, high mobility artillery rocket system that's, of course, gotten a lot of attention in Ukraine. There's been a focus on what that could do for Taiwan in the event of a conflict between Taiwan and China. It's a pretty significant weapon system of ours in a lot of ways, right? And he says in this case, anything that touches HIMARS, $3,000 to $4,000 is the starting price. So he knows what he has. He knows how important this is, and he's calling out a high number to try to pull in for this. Now, it wasn't clear through the indictment at which point the sting operation effectively took place and what he was actually selling to the Chinese versus selling to the government that would eventually arrest him and try him for these crimes. So I don't know if the Chinese got the HIMARS stuff or not, but something to keep back in mind here. He then went on, kind of transitioned out of this hard drive and computer stuff, which I just want to mention, I don't know how any unit in the military for any significant period of time can really be missing 10 to 20 hard drives, especially when they're secret or top secret. Things can get misplaced. It's just the nature of the beast. And the Army's big. We got a lot of stuff laying around. So there's no doubt that something could fall through the cracks. But for a supply sergeant in this case, what it kind of leads me to believe is he knows how to make things happen, how to make things disappear. Anybody who's been in the military know the supply sergeants are the guys that know kind of the ins and outs, how to acquire things when they might otherwise not be available. And it kind of makes you think, is that what he's doing in this case as well? Finding workarounds to be able to get these things off the books and sell them for a little extra cash. Now, he then moved over to some documents where there were some pictures of him snapping pictures on his desk and his computer of random documents and materials that he passed over for sale. Two of them stood out here. One was the strategic and operation for rockets and missiles. And the second was a U.S. Army Pacific multinational command post exercise. Can't imagine why China would be interested in that second one or the first, both, but pretty detailed there. Pacific Command Post exercise, kind of a war game scenario of what a possible conflict with China could look like. And in this case, Zhao, both of these are marked as confidential. He took a bunch of pictures of these, scanned them over, and tried to sell them. Now, this was announced by FBI Director Kash Patel as well as Attorney General Pam Bondi, saying that they arrested these two active duty soldiers and one former soldier for theft of government property and a bribery scheme. For what it's worth, reading through the indictment, it wasn't entirely clear to me what the bribery portion here is, but I'm also not a lawyer, so I have no idea what comes of this. What's next for these guys that just sold out the United States to China? So I used ChatGPT. This seems like the reliable thing to do. And I said, I uploaded the indictment and I said, what could these guys, what could the punishment possibly be for this? And it laid out a few, all the way up and down, because there's a bunch of stuff here, like conspiracy to defraud the U.S. government. You don't want that. That's not a good thing, but that's up to 5 years in prison. And when looking at some of these other things, it's not as maybe pressing for Zhao and the other defendants. The top one here, Espionage Act violations. That, don't want to be anywhere near that. That's bad. That's bad. That's going to be a problem. In this case, again, according to the all-knowing ChatGPT, they say Espionage Act violations could result in up to life in prison or in extreme cases, the death penalty if the espionage resulted in the death of U.S. agents or troops. It's not clear, of course, that this resulted in the death of U.S. agents or troops. I'd be surprised if a supply sergeant at JBLM was able to get his hands on the level of classification needed that would actually put U.S. troops at harm's way immediately, especially given the fact that we're not engaged in an active conflict with China. But as we saw in one of those hard drives, he said, I don't even know what's on here. So you guys figure it out. I hope it's good. Get some extra money if it's good. It also could be nothing, but we'll see. So either way, these guys are going to be in for some rough months ahead, I think is the easiest way to put it. But again, we've got two active duty soldiers, one former soldier, all American citizens, serving the United States Army, deciding to sell out their countrymen and their country to China for, $10,000, $15,000 at most. We'll see how this thing shakes out in the coming weeks and months. But that's all I've got for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all next time.